Hey y'all, welcome to this video, and watch out. I've got charts. I've got screenshots from the internet of pixelated line graphs, and let's get into it. So what we're looking at here is what the kids would call a response curve, and what we have is an illustration of how if you are only focusing on your damage output, which a lot of people playing Diablo 4 will gravitate towards always choosing the higher damage option when given two options. You have an option to increase your survivability, and you have an option to increase your damage output. Everybody, myself included, has a little devil on their shoulder, a little Diablo on their shoulder, saying, go for the damage. Nobody needs survivability, because it's more exciting. You want that. You always like to see that damage number go up. But what's going to happen is over here on this vertical axis, we have effective DPS. So not the DPS number that shows up on your screen, but the DPS that you actually end up doing, your actual damage that you're outputting. Because we have to factor in, if you only invest in damage and you go completely glass cannon, if you get hit once, you're probably going to have to back up, eat a potion, run around, kite some enemies, go for a jog. And while you're doing all of this stuff that's not dealing damage, your effective DPS is going down. So down here on the x-axis, we have monster strength. And what this is illustrating is, you can imagine this journey where you start out, you're level 1, you're nobody in the game, and then you get a couple levels, and you just keep pumping up your damage, and you get to a point where you're doing flying through easy content. The monsters aren't really that hard. They're staying at about your level, and you just keep getting more skills that are doing more damage. You're getting better items. And everything's great. You just keep investing in damage. You don't care about survivability. You're on world tier 1 or 2, so nothing's that hard. And then all of a sudden you get to the end game. You go into world tier 3 and beyond, and enemies are now higher level than you, and they deal a lot of damage. They have more aggressive tactics. Blah blah blah. Your resistances are getting overcome, and all of a sudden your effective DPS goes down if you've been ignoring survivability. And so what we want to talk about here is how, this curve doesn't need to happen. You could maybe be all the way up here with a much happier effective DPS, get this happy DPS. And down here, you don't have to fall down from these great heights if you just take a little bit of consideration into how you're going to balance your DPS, your damage dealing ability, so that you can stay alive. So we have over here again effective DPS kind of as this axis, and one of these curves we have is the value that you're going to get from balancing your damage and survivability. And then over here we have a line that's showing what your effective DPS is going to look like as monster difficulty increases. If you've only, you never focused on leg day, right? You were just bumping up your damage. You got this killer upper body strength, but you just can't sit there and take a few hits from the monsters. So there's this inflection point. I think the reality is, early on in the game, you don't have to care about survivability at all, no matter what class you are, really. I think you just pump up that damage and your effective DPS goes up. And it's not until you kind of get into that world tier 3 and these just harder difficulties, harder monsters, that it's really going to become beneficial for you to actually stop putting everything into the upper body and actually start, thinking about, how do I balance my damage and survivability? So as an illustration of how this plays out in the game, we have a couple aspects here, and balancing damage and survivability. This means you might give a closer look to things like these defensive legendary aspects. One of these is this is all for the sorceress. I guess some of these are generic, but For the sorceress, they have this basic skills grant 25% damage reduction. I forget, maybe all classes can use this, but 25% damage reduction, that's really nice. Then you have Aspect of Disobedience. This is going to be increasing your armor as you deal damage to enemies up to a certain level. Armor is going to be a really great source of damage reduction. But you know what these two things aren't doing? They're not increasing your nominal damage. So that little damage number on your character screen is not going up. And so a lot of people are just going to make a beeline for, Aspect of Control. This is dealing, big damage boost when this condition is met. And Edge Master's Aspect, right? Like dealing big damage boost when you have more of your primary resource. And these are good legendary aspects, but if you only have offensive legendary aspects, then, think about this guy. If this guy just could stand still and just punch someone, that's great. But if somebody comes over here and just, throws a paper airplane at his knees, this guy's taken out, not having a good time. So you don't want to be taken down by a paper airplane. You want to maybe say, okay, I'm going to be attacking a lot with my basic skill to generate some resource, or wait for my resource to regenerate while I'm attacking these enemies. And so since you're going to be doing this all the time, it seems like you could keep up this 25% damage reduction all the time. Maybe that's worth investing in, because if you reduce damage that you're taking, then all of a sudden, instead of your effective DPS dropping off in the later game content, you're going to be increasing your effective DPS because you don't always have to run away from a fight. You're going to be able to keep pumping damage into those enemies, even if they're not just sitting there taking it. If they start dishing damage back out to you, you can actually, stay in the kitchen and take the heat. So that's really all that I wanted to touch on in this video. Come back here to this beautiful art for you. And, a lot of you probably already knew all this stuff, but as we ramp up for the game coming out, maybe there are new people watching this kind of stuff, and hopefully this helps somebody out there kind of avoid the trap of just, never focusing on leg day and going all in on pure damage output. That said, just have fun, play the way you want to play, and I will see you in the game.